Good afternoon. A magnificent weekend of football itself. I want to get to some of the footy discussion points towards the end of this podcast. The Bombers, so many stories. Carlton look like they're the real deal. Melbourne just keep getting up. They keep motivating themselves. A huge performance against St Kilda, who we rated, of course, yesterday at the MCG. But first off this morning, a development concerning West Coast and their nightclub situation and their COVID and performance issues more broadly. Trevor Nisbet, their CEO, revealing this morning that up to seven players, attended the Leaderville Hip E, not a bad name, that Hip E nightclub last Saturday night, or 2 Saturdays ago now, after their huge loss, 100-point plus loss to Richmond. The context, of course, was that we knew of two, and now it's emerged there's seven players, and those players apparently will be named and even fined this afternoon by the club. Adam Simpson was livid in regards to this situation on Friday, and this development is clearly a concern for the club today. One issue, in my view, is why these names have just come forward now. I, in fact, put a name to the club, an additional one on Friday, and they came back and said it wasn't that player. So we'll find out who they are in fairness this afternoon. But I'm told from West Coast a short time ago that their investigation, this is for some context, was completed yesterday. They wanted to wait until they got home from Brisbane to talk to all the players, and that's why they now know of seven players. There's no suggestion that West Coast has covered this up per se. They only had 21 or 22 players to pick from over the weekend due to injury and illness. The broader discussion point here is obviously West Coast's performance and why they're not travelling well, even compared to some other sides that have missing players. So Fremantle, for example, they've had massive COVID outs. They won by 78 points over the weekend, albeit over North Melbourne. Essendon, they were missing 16 players unavailable up to over the weekend due to flu and the like and injury. They won by 27 points. West Coast, though, just seemed to keep losing. The broader discussion, of course, is the club have very clearly, I think, backed Adam Simpson. And look, he's a premiership coach, so I'm not in any way bagging Adam Simpson, but clearly he'll be under a degree of pressure or certainly scrutiny now. The club externally seems to be in a somewhat state of disarray. It was back in 2020 that he questioned some of the hub practices, and this quote resonates in my mind.
If we can't quarantine in our own houses when we get back and stay in a hotel for another 2 weeks, we need to get home after Richmond. So that's our position, and we're pretty strong on that. I mean, to play another 2 or 3 games here and then have to go back to Perth and sit in a hotel for another 2 weeks, we're not here to complain, but we've got to look after our staff and our players, and it's probably a bridge too far.
That was on or about the 19th of June 2020. Since then, in that season, they won 11 games and reached a final. They won 10 games last year. They've won just one game so far this year. It just seems, from a broad perspective, that West Coast haven't handled the hub issues well, and it just seems to be getting worse with this nightclub incident. So it'll be interesting to see what Trevor Nisbet says in regards to that, their CEO this afternoon from West Coast. Dan Hannebery, who's a bit of a forgotten Saints star in many regards, simply because he hasn't played very much since he went to the club in 2019 on up to $700,000 or $800,000 a year, is currently in Germany seeing Dr. Hans Wilhelm Müller-Wohlfahrt, who I've spoken about before. He's a famed doctor, a doctor to the stars, who was the Bayern Munich doctor for the best part of 40 years before he left and parted company with Bayern Munich in 2020. Just for some reference, and I'm sure many of our listeners will recall this, Dr. Wohlfahrt, whose nickname, according to plenty of internet sources, I didn't come up with this myself, is Healing Hands. It went pretty well on Twitter last night. But Healing Hands, or Dr. Wohlfahrt, who's a guru by all accounts, he's 77 these days, but he did successfully treat Jordan De Goey and Darcy Moore previously. Dan Hannebery was at the Swans 2012 Premiership reunion on Saturday, jumped on the kite, jumped on the plane, and is now in Germany seeking treatment on that calf, really in a bid to resuscitate what's left of his AFL career. He's in the final year of his contract and clearly would like to get out and assist the Saints in what could be an exciting year for St Kilda. So Dan's taken that into his own hands. He's been struggling with that calf. He's had persistent, well-documented soft tissue injuries. And on his own cost and his own accord, he's gone to see Dr. Healing Hands, Dr. Wohlfahrt, over in Germany, and he's going to have some treatment there this week. An injury update highlighted by Max Gawn this morning had scans. Both TV networks were there. I'm told that he's confident there's no issues. It was interesting. He had 11 touches yesterday. We'll have more on the news regarding Max's scan tonight. McStay, who obviously is a free agent, very sought after from Brisbane, was cleared of any broken bones in his ankle Saturday night, but is having scans today on the ligaments. That could have a big bearing on the Lions season, so keep a close on that. Joel Selwood should be fine for this weekend. I'm told he had the cork quad, I should say, had some bleeding, and sometimes when it's bleeding, that can then lead to a tear. So I'm told They just took a conservative approach regarding Joel, the Cats captain, the much-loved Cats captain. He'll be back this week. And Marcus Bontempelli, the word I get from the Bulldogs is he will be right for Friday night against the Pies. He's had that persistent foot and ankle soreness. I mentioned the icing last week. The Bulldogs just took an opportunity to give him that 5 or 6 day break, off the 5 or 6 day break to give him a rest. And it's going to be very important for his return. They really, really clearly missed the Bond, and in particular his leadership on Friday night. Just some news discussion points out of the weekend for mine coming out of the game. North Melbourne, again, terribly disappointing. You know, I speak to a lot of trade sources. I think the word I get is they just don't have enough AFL standard players at the moment, or at least they don't have many B+ or A graders, that's for sure. So, look, it's just going to be a long burn with them. I spoke to a supporter yesterday, just came up to me at the VFL, and clearly supporters are now worried about their performance as well. It's going to take time. That's the best way I can put it, in my view, just at the minute. A bit of a gentle reminder for Collingwood on Saturday that they lack the elite talent that Richmond do for mine. Tom Lynch was absolutely brilliant with 6 goals. There was some focus on Darcy Moore's performance in terms of giving too much space to Lynch. I know that the Duck, Wayne Carey, spoke about that on the Sunday Rub yesterday here on Triple M. Sydney, they're not at their best at the minute, clearly. The Giants, they're a big story. 53 points. They were thumped in Canberra, where they should, in theory, perform well against the Cats. Clearly, Leon Cameron's chances of now getting a contract renewal beyond this season are terribly, terribly low. I don't want to say sources because they're not sources directly aligned with the club, but people I speak to, industry sources, you know, often say now that maybe they could amicably part ways with Leon Cameron, you know, in a mature adult sense, a bit like what happened with Bucks and Collingwood, perhaps around the mid-season bye. I think it's a huge chance if they can't, you know, at least start winning some more games and improve their performances again against a top side in Geelong or a top 4 or top 6 side. They struggled on the weekend. Essendon produced one of the upsets of the year. You know, 5 late changes. They were missing up to 16 players that were unavailable. You know, proof yesterday they got thumped in the VFL because they haven't really got any depth to choose from. But in terms of a story to emerge from that, I think the emerging talent at Essendon was on full display on Saturday night, which was fantastic for Bombers fans. And I guess it's proof as to why they've gone to the draft for the last couple of years and got some of that talent. You know, in particular, Martin, he was absolutely brilliant, as well as Hobbs on Saturday night. Melbourne, they just keep getting up, and Carlton, for mine, look like the real deal. There's some real excitement surrounding the Blues. I know they only beat Adelaide yesterday, but it was, again, an impressive win. Just finally, 2 stories. Patrick Cripps will find out tonight if he's got any MRO issues regarding his tackle yesterday. I don't think he will. I thought that was just a tackle in the course of play. Having said that, it'll be interesting to see if one of the Brownlow favourites, if the MRO take a different view tonight. We'll find out at about 6:30. Let's fingers crossed for Cripps. I think he'd be on about 15 or 16 Brownlow votes by now at least. He's in incredible form. And just finally, Heritier Lumumba. Last week, Heritier revealed online that his talks with Collingwood, he'd concluded or stopped those talks for the moment regarding reconciliation. He's come out in the Herald Sun and Mick Warner today explaining some of his issues with Collingwood in more detail, including one report of an assistant coach showing players pornographic images at one stage, and Nathan Buckley's response to that. Bucks has also commented on that today. So it's a bit of a lingering issue, Collingwood and Heritier Lumumba, certainly this week. Lumumba explaining those in his own dossier, which the Herald Sun's obviously got a copy of, regarding his issues with Collingwood. So that'll be a persistent talking point, no doubt, this week. But it's going to be a big day in news. It's been a big day in news. Thanks so much for joining us. I'll be back on Thursday and Friday. Triple M rocks football.
That was Tom Browne's news. Come back every Monday, Thursday and Friday for more, and subscribe to Triple M Footy on Listener or wherever you listen to get all our podcasts throughout the season. For Ream Hot Water and McDonald's, Triple M rocks footy.